Welcome back to the weekly Brickcast podcast. In today's Brickcast episode, we're going to be discussing the previous 2019 Christmas ARG on Brick Hill. If you wish to support the Brickcast podcast, you can purchase the merchandise linked in the description. It should also be noted that if you purchase merchandise, you can also get the patrons role in our Discord server, the link to which is shown on screen right now. If you want to get notified of new videos, make sure to subscribe and turn on all notifications, as only 21.3% of all viewers are subscribed to the channel. And we've also recently introduced Brickcast supporter tiers, which you can learn more about in the description, and we will also be discussing more in depth at the end of this podcast episode, so stay tuned for that. Now, with that being said, we're going to start the podcast with a discussion of the 2019 Christmas ARG.
Alright, so first of all, let's start off with the ARG of Christmas 2019. So, first of all, you'd have to go to the console, and within this console, well, this whole part is kind of simplistic in reference to the ARG after this. Anyways, so there was the string of text, which spelt out LQXWLR. Within this, it was simply, well, a Caesar cipher. And the description of the gift itself was referencing said Caesar cipher. So once this was put into the Caesar cipher, scrolling through the different keys or whatever, you'd be able to find MRYXMS, basically Merry Christmas. After this, as is customary to all of these ARGs, you'd put the answer within the link with a slash at the end of that. So, as this ARG has multiple steps, I'll be passing it on to Rag. So Rag, mind explaining the next part?
So, on the page where you saw on the Merry Xmas page, there is an image. Now, this image had two green squares or circles. It's been a while. So, you had to use the hex codes from these squares to find coordinates within an 8x8 square. And once you decoded that square, once you just put it into binary, and then once you translated it back into text, it said to open raw. So you had to open the Merry Xmas image in Notepad or Notepad++ or whatever you used. So at the bottom, like the very bottom, it showed ALVIXRGKSF. And it was at the bottom. So on the image itself, not instead, on it, there's another sequence, like SKGBEFMFNH. Now, many people didn't know what to do, but what you had to do was that you had to subtract the number that the letters were, that you had to add the number the letters were in the alphabet, like A is 1, B is 2, C is 3. Or, if the letter on the image was red, you had to subtract it instead. And this would spell out 2K16. Well, 2KSX-teen. Which would lead to the next step, and you had to append it onto the Merry Xmas page.
And Rag, on this part... Oh wait, I apologize for the interruption, but I'd like to explain. On this specific part, our group, because I was a part of this codex back in 2019, we completely missed the part of the coordinates because, in previous ARGs, you had to look through the image and stuff like that. So it was just customary to look through the image, so we didn't even need those two green squares. What we did is we simply opened in Notepad++ as a type of, instinctual reaction. And within it, we found the string of text, completely skipping one part. Like, I personally, once we did our research, I did not even know what the two green squares are done. Now I know, obviously, thanks to Rag and his in this part. But yes, I just thought I'd explain that. And now I'll let Rebecca speak within the next part of this ARG.
Before I want to move on, actually, I just wanted to say, I actually knew the answer to, that step, but I was just asleep the entire time, so my group got past that step while I was asleep, even though I knew all of it, so that was kind
Nice.
of a funny event. Okay, so next part, after you solve that, you basically brought to an image that had 7 lines on it. 2 which were missing, it kind of looked like a snooker table at the bottom, and that gave a hint to figure out the step. Now, the lines on the page were train lines, and there were 2 missing train lines at the highest scoring snooker balls. Now, these were Hammersmith and City, as well as Northern. Now, the key at the bottom brought these 2 together to make Northern, Hammersmith and City, and once you appended that onto the link of 2K16 and you added /Northern, Hammersmith and City, you'd be brought to the 4th and final page of the 2019 Christmas ARG. Blocky, do you want to explain this page?
Yes, the next part I'll explain shortly after saying that the part previously took our group a good amount of time to figure out, because, you know, none of our group played snooker. Anyways, let me just explain the final part of this ARG. So, there was an image, and on this image there was another, you know, a password box. You know, whenever you enter your password within Brickhill, there was this input. So, on this image, you'd be able to find a bunch of weird symbols, right? A bunch of weird, kind of funky alien language symbols. It was really odd. And in this, it was around 16 symbols across by 18. And these symbols, what they represented was, you know, letters or numbers or decodable English text. So on the top of this was easily a hint. It was around 15 down. So using this, you'd be able to go 15 characters down. As I said, it was 16 by 18, and there was a phrase, and on there, "You lose this time" was present. Once you decode this entire symbol, which, spoiler alert, it took our group forever. So after this, entering that passcode into the, you know, the input, gave you the gift. It brought you back to the page in similar fashion to the previous ARGs, and there you go. And
I just want to clarify that the way you actually like figured out what these symbols meant was kind of complex. So you basically had to do frequency analysis, which basically analyzes like the frequency that letters appear in English. So once you figured out how to like basically do frequency analysis, you would assume that the most popular symbol would basically be an E, for example, and you'd slowly work from there to try and work out what the text was. So yeah, that's how you were meant to solve
ridiculous. Now let's go back like after this, because I was in the same group as them. Let's continue as to the funny happenings within our group and explain more in detail our struggles with this specific ARG. So, I'll first start off with our group's experiences with the first step, the one with the console. So anyone would like to begin with how easy this was, or would you rather let me explain it?
I personally want you to explain it, Blocky, because I was actually asleep during this step. Like, I didn't solve it.
Yeah, you were asleep for the first 2 steps. That was great. And the second one, you completely knew the answer, as you said previously. But yes, the first step, in terms of an ARG, this one was extremely easy. Compared to the complete struggle that we had on previous ARGs, aka 2018 ARG and 2017, which we'll explain eventually once in an upcoming episode. But this one was ridiculously easy. we had to, you know, the Caesar. Oh yes, but yeah, there was a whole Caesar thing, and there you go. Like we did a bunch of Caesar ciphers in the past, so this was completely second nature. The only thing that might have been a tiny smidge amount of difficulty was, well, the console, because this was only seen, well, the console thing was most likely, again, my memory might be rusty, so you can correct me, Rag and Rebecca, but from my memory, the only time that you had to do something within the console, like previously, was the binary egg, the egg bee on the Brickcast Hacker page, which we explained during the egg hunt episode. So yeah, this one was absolutely easy. So yes, this in terms of rating, this step has to get like a 2 or 3 out of 10. due to the fact that this was just a beginner step. Most people knew how to do this. The points are there simply because it reused an old aspect from the binary egg, but apart from that, it was easy and we got through it pretty easily. You guys, I know Replica may not have much to say about it, but Rag, do you have anything to say about this extremely easy step?
Not really. The only struggle was just trying to find which page it was on. That's it. But that was
I
even
see,
before
understandable.
the gift was activated. Now, some other mishappenings in my group. Our group was the first group to get the 2019 gift, I think. Or was it 20?
No, then we were not the
Yeah.
first group to get to 2019 gift. But yeah, I remember as clear as day.
But anyways,
so-
Yeah, you'd remember that, Blocky.
in my group, I was not in Blocky and Rebecca's. I think I was with like Leon and stuff. So we had some like mishappenings with the green squares and stuff. We also just like skipped the whole coordinate thing and just opened it in Notepad because why not? But like the last two steps, we just had a lot of trouble on. And I feel bad for Leon because he carried the fourth step. Like, he did all of the work. It was so hard and
Yeah.
it took so long. I feel
Similar
so
to
bad for him.
Bucket.
But hey, it was worth it, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So again, as you've explained in the second part, our group did the exact same thing. It's a shame that Rebecca was completely asleep because she knew the answer to this. She knew this entire thing. But I can tell with a certainty that our group we were stuck on the A=1, Z=26 for a bit. I'd say a couple of hours, but yes. But thank God we found out how to, open it in Notepad because we'd be stuck even longer. Maybe Rebecca would have been able to tell the answer. Anyways, so this one, I like the creativity with the whole A=the alphabet cipher thing. But the only thing that I can really complain about this one would be the fact that, the Notepad stuff. But in all, this was the first page, which is the first, well, technically the second step, but the first step with an actual link. It was the beginning of the of it all. So I have to give this step, say, a solid 6. Because I also completely forgot to explain, but there was some red herrings in the background. It was like I completely forget, but it was pretty sure it was like this kind of grainy farm setting.
Yeah, it was
Buildings,
like a
I remember.
snowman.
Rebecca, explain.
Yeah, it was like a snowman just in the snow. there wasn't anything too special. I think it was just like a snowman with a plant pot in it, and that eventually became a brick kill item that came out of the gift. I think the snowman buddy, I think it's called.
Oh yeah, the snowman, yeah. And I'm pretty sure our group was kind of looking into that snowman. That was sort of a red herring, but I remember our group used to blame that snowman for us not being able to solve it. It was all his fault. It was all the snowman. He was staring at us intimidatingly, and we were not able to complete it. No. I'm just joking. So after this, we had the third step, which I'd like to explain. Well, since I've spoken a lot, since I've explained firstly most of the things, and let Rag and Rebecca explain their thoughts on it. But the second part, what do you guys rate it?
For the second step, like for the two green squares, I'd rate it like a 6 out of 10. It was just kind of, it was a very weird thing, and the fact that we could just skip it because it was just such a easy, like, second nature thing to do, just to open an ARG thing in Notepad. It was quite easy. Rebecca, what do you think on the second step?
Yeah, I would also rate it like actually, I'd rate it like a 7, but that's only because I actually did like the hex stuff and like the pixels, the binary stuff. I did all of that, and then I just figured out, oh, I could have just opened it in Notepad this entire time, and the answer would have been right there. So that really annoyed me, and just the fact that I was asleep when my group was doing it too.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
Overall, I'd say it was a good step.
Yeah, for sure.
It wasn't the hardest, but it was a good one.
Yeah, the only issue with this one is the fact that, the answer was staring at you right in the face. You didn't have to. One step was easily skippable. Big. If I would have been able to change it, I would have made it a bit less obvious. Like within the notepad, of course, you'd be able to find certain sections you'd have to combine. Like instead of just one little string of text, I'd make it so that you'd have to solve the two green squares to find certain sections within the notepad image itself that you had to look through and combine it all at the end. So once those ratings are done, I'd like Rag to start on his thoughts of the third part. So Rag, can you explain what your group struggles within the third?
Before I start on the third step, about that snowman on the second step, I'm pretty sure it was a snowman built by Space Builder and Brick Luke, like when they were young. So that's cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was built. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was built in around 2005. That's what I remember. Anyways, it's a very old image, and Space Builder and Luke were very, very young once they built it. So again, I'd like Rag to continue with explaining the part 3.
Alright, so for the third step, oh man. This one took us a while. I don't even think we did the snooker table step. I think we just figured out that they were train lines, and eventually we figured out that, like, if space is in the United Kingdom, then these must be United Kingdom lines. And eventually we just figured it out that it was Northern Hammersmith and City. I'd give this step like a, I don't know, like a 7 out of 10. I do like the idea of like snooker. Like it was a very interesting concept to have in the ARG. And not only that, just, like combining trains and snooker was very interesting. Like, I think it was probably one of the best steps of the ARG of 2019. Because it wasn't painful, but it also wasn't, like, obvious. It wasn't obvious. So, yeah, that's why I give it, like, a 7 out of 10. Rebecca?
Yeah, I'd personally rate, like, this step as, like, a 6 out of 10, but that's because, like, I feel like it was incredibly easy to guess. I didn't really know much about snooker, and if I recall correctly, the way we figured out the link was probably just because we figured out the two that were missing. We just guessed which order they went in to get to the next URL. That's probably what we did. I don't think we actually understood the snooker order or anything to actually get past the step. So
yeah, like literally nobody within our group played snooker, as I explained before. I thought it was 8-ball.
Yeah, so I feel like if you had to know more about snooker, it would have been a more interesting step. Just researching everything about snooker to solve it. But yeah, I feel like it was pretty easy overall. So that kind of brings its rating down a bit for me. It was a decent step. It was better than step 1 though. So yeah, Blocky, what are your opinions on this step?
Yes, personally, I have to give this a solid 7.5 out of 10 due to the originality of it. Like, who would have thought to combine a table game, when playing with friends, and train stations? It's unique. I like it. But the only thing that's, I didn't like about this is the full fact that, like, nobody knew what snooker was. Basically, like Rebecca said, our group, we had to, essayer, trial and error to solve it. And it's just, because nobody knew snooker. It would have scored an 8 out of 10 for me if it worked to the fact that Space Builder thought about the whole audience, like the majority of it. Like, if it instead was pool instead of snooker, then it might have been like the 0.5 points would have been added. But again, I have to say it still gains a 7.5 out of me due to the originality of it, difficulty of it, And, it's just a solid step. It really was. So now as I've explained a lot my thoughts, I'd like Rebecca to start on her thoughts about the fourth and final step, and the shenanigans that happened over there.
Okay, yeah. So the fourth and final step. This was personally my favorite step of the entire ARG. It was the hardest step, and it was really involved. Like, as I mentioned before, you had to do frequency analysis to figure out the most common symbol, and basically once you figured out the frequency, you would convert that symbol to an English letter and so on until you got basically the entire transcript. Then you'd have to do the 15 down thing to see you lose this time and get the gift. And I just remember it taking hours, because if I recall, our group went on this alternate theory that was, even though I did suggest frequency analysis, if I recall, we went on some alternative theory for 3 hours before we actually went back to mine. And once we ended up doing that, I think it was I don't know, a day or two, maybe a few hours. It's really fuzzy in my head, but I remember we went on to that, and then this is one of the funny moments from my group actually. I said I was going to get some coffee, and I came back, and then I just instantly solved it the second I had the coffee. It was just insane. But yeah, I made this step a solid 8 or 9, because I feel like it was the most difficult step in the ARG, and it was probably the most difficult step in any Brick Hill ARG up to that point. Maybe that would be contested with Red Key or something, but yeah, it was definitely a really hard part of the ARG.
Yeah, for sure. It was very difficult, completely difficult, and due to this, surprisingly, this is not my favorite step. I didn't like it because of the fact that, frequency analysis is more so guesswork. I'd have to say that, and I didn't even know at the time what frequency analysis was, so I couldn't really contribute much to this entire step, and because of this, it has to knock down to around, I think, 5.5 out of 10. It gains 0.5 due to the fact that, we had a good time solving it as a group, it was, but again, I was still on edge because of the fact that I couldn't solve it. It was very difficult. So yes, this part, again, it was unique. I gotta give it that. It was well thought out. The different symbols really looked cool. The setting itself was very nice. I like the red and the yellow symbols. The contrast between the colors are great. But again, I gotta say, this part was way too difficult for me. I gotta say though, I remember Matt Bucket's contributions to this were huge. He solved a good portion of it. I gotta give him credit. That's what I remember anyways. But yes, there you go. Those are my ratings for this entire step. So there you go. I'll give this, again, I already explained my ratings, my bad. So once this is out of the way, this entire ARG, let's rate this entire ARG as a whole. So I'll, as I didn't explain my thoughts first, I'll explain it now. This entire ARG, I'll have to give it a 7.5 out of 10. It would have been higher last year, but this one was completely not the greatest. Hold on, I'll have to pass it on to Rag due to the fact that there's an error in my brain right now.
Yeah, so my opinions on step 4, it was a good step. Don't get me wrong, but man, would you have to go through so many things just to figure out the letter frequency or whatever? It was just so unnecessarily hard. I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. It wasn't bad by any means. It was genius. It was creative. You had to actually use your brain, but come on. I think it's just a little too guessworky, like Blocky said. So anyways, Blocky, why don't you give your thoughts on the whole ARG as a whole?
Yes, the entire ARG as a whole. I'd have to give it a 7.5, as I've said previously, but I had a brain fart. The reason being is that previously I'd give this ARG maybe a 8.5 out of 10. The only thing is that the 2020 ARG crushes in comparison, but this was still a good one. This was still a nice group. The whole atmosphere was it was very hectic, but still fun at the time. So yes, that's why I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10. Another reason being is that the creativity of it was very fun, on par with everything else in the past. The only thing that I can complain about this is the amount of guesswork involved. First was, the whole, I have to say, the snooker part with the trains in the game. You have to basically guess what it was, and since the audience didn't really play much snooker, not many groups actually play snooker, in fact. This was it was a lot of guesswork. After this was the last part, which again, lots of guesswork was involved. Again, of course it was frequency analysis, but again, you had to trial and error. I don't really like trial and error when I do ARGs, but there you go. Let's just put it up to the point. That 7.5 out of 10. So Rag, mind explaining your thoughts about this entire ARG as a whole?
I think this ARG is like a 7 out of 10. Like, some steps could have been stronger, like they could have just been less obvious, and some could have been less hard, but this ARG did have 4 steps, so it is understandable. And I'm not gonna rag on Space Builder for making it so short, because because like the 2020 ARG was it was so big, mostly because there's more people there's just more people working on it, but like 2019 was good. It was a good one. Rebecca?
Yeah, personally, like, I liked the ARG, but one of my main problems with it was, like, the inconsistency and the difficulty of the steps. Like, step 1 was incredibly easy, step 2 was kind of easy, step 3 was kind of easy, and then it kind of just, like, threw it all at you at the end and gave you, like, a really hard step. Now, I don't really like that, because I felt like, especially in a previous ARG, I'm not going to say much about this, because this can be saved for another Brickcast episode, but I feel like in, the Christmas ARG of 2018, for example, the difficulty was really more spread out across the different steps, whereas in this one it was more like all thrown into step 4. Now, that's why I like step 4, because it's a really difficult step and it really tests you, but like, I feel like the ARG would have been better as a whole if more steps were like that and it wasn't just like slowly building up to this one huge step. So I'd still rate it like a 7 overall, but I feel like it could have been an 8, maybe an 8.5 if it had more consistent difficulty throughout the entire like ARG. That's just my opinions anyways. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to discussing in more detail the Brickcast supporter tiers that we announced earlier in the podcast at the very start. So now, Blocky, you're going to start us off with like why we've decided to introduce these supporter tiers.
Yes, we've decided to just, introduce these supporter tiers due to the simple fact that to support us as creators, such as giving us an incentive to create more videos, inspire us, and also to give you as users a voice and more interaction within this entire podcast itself. As we, as creators, thought that you guys didn't have too much interaction within the podcast itself due to the fact that it's pre-recorded. But this will give you guys an opportunity to have your username read and more interaction, personal interaction between us as creators and you as the viewers. So I'll give it on to Rag to explain each name of the supporter tiers and other smaller information such as the prices of each and every single one. Rag?
So, the tiers there are 3 tiers. The lowest tier that you can get is the bronze tier. It's $50 or 500 bits. Then the middle tier is silver. which is $100 or 1,000 bits. And then the highest tier is gold. It's $200 and 2,000 bits. Now, Rebecca, would you mind explaining what each tier does?
Okay, yes. So basically, the bronze tier, if you purchase this tier, you will have your name read at the end of each Brickcast episode for the rest of the month, and you will also get an exclusive Brickcast Discord role until your membership is expired, really. For the silver tier, you get all previous rewards, excluding the bronze tier role. You get access to the supporter chat and supporter votes channels until the end of your subscription period as well. And for the gold tier, this is the big one. You get all of the previous rewards, so you get access to the supporter chat, supporter votes. You also get access to the bloopers channel, which is for funny outtakes and other occurrences during the recording of the podcast. And you also get to choose who says your name at the end of the podcast for the remainder of your period as a member. Now, the up-to-date link to purchase said tiers will always be in the merchandise channel of our Discord, and subscriptions will typically last until the first of the following month. But for this round of subscriptions, given that we decided to launch these on the 11th of May, the subscriptions will actually last until the 11th of June if you purchase them right now. Okay, so it should also be noted that although you do have access to the supporter votes channel, we may not always stick to the votes. We will obviously listen to your opinions and see what you have to say about the podcast and what we intend to do it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it is our decision. So please, don't get mad if you don't see everything in supporter votes get implemented into the podcast. And also keep in mind that this is a very new system, so things may be subject to change. Maybe the tier prices may be subject to change. Benefits may be subject to change. So just keep that in mind when you decide to make your purchasing decision. Now, with that being said, we are now going to show the current list of Brickcast supporters, and their names will be read. Okay, so the first supporter, if you want to read this one, Rag.
Alright. Thank you, Aiden, for supporting the Brickcast podcast.
Now, the second gold tier supporter did not specify who they wanted to read their username, so I'm just going to read this. Thank you 12345 for being a gold member of the Brickcast podcast. The second, orange did also not specify, so
I'll read it.
Yeah, Blocky can read that.
Yes, thank you a lot for supporting this podcast, Orange. Now let's move on to Sir Stefan, which he specified that Rebecca read his name. So, Rebecca.
Okay, so yeah, thank you very, very much, Sir Stephen, for purchasing the gold tier of the Brickcast. Your support really means a lot to this podcast. And now the final person, Rag, if you want to read this.
Alright, so we would like to thank Kuda for supporting the Brickcast podcast and buying gold tier supporter.
Okay, with that being said, this is going to be the end of this Brickcast episode. Okay, so the reason that we've decided to make this a short Brickcast episode is because the 2020 ARG is so large and in-depth that we feel like we could make a much longer Brickcast episode just on that ARG. So that's the reason that we've decided to only make this a 2019 ARG video instead of combining it into multiple ARGs.